Camping. A very basic term for a very basic feature, and the last piece of the Triforce of main killer strategies for me to cover. Welcome to the Entities Guide. Today, we're covering what camping is. Camping actually has two definitions, proxy camping and face camping. Proxy camping is where killers walk around the thing they want to protect, be it generators, exit gates, or most commonly, hooked survivors. The entire purpose of killers doing this is to stop progress, or to search for a new objective to do. Patrolling generators lets killers find survivors, starting a new chase and getting more pressure. People call it patrolling, is just a clearer way of saying proxying when it is gen-related. Proxying, however, is the only way you'll hear when killers are near hooked survivors, in any instance, be resetting their power, kicking pallets, or defending the 3-gen that's right next to the hooked survivor. It's a clear way of saying where the killer is or knowing what they're doing. Face camping, on the other hand, is when the killer is standing right in front of a hooked survivor, breathing down their neck, making sure their forest is trimmed. And I do mean right in front of. Anything less is proxy camping and not the same thing. This was most commonly seen on killers like Bubba, who could stay in front of the hook with their chainsaw revving and survivors literally couldn't do anything. Which is also why camping is by far the most nerfed thing in DBD history, starting with the multiple perks survivors can bring. The main one being Reassurance from Rebecca, letting survivors pause a hook timer for 30 seconds when within 6 meters. Only one time per hook state, but that's 30 seconds where the survivor on hook can't die. Of course, survivors can't trust their teammates to have 1 out of 500 perks in their loadout, so instead you can run Camaraderie from Steve, which pauses your hook timer for 34 seconds when a survivor gets close. Then there's the multiple self-unhook perks. Deliverance and Wicked both give a 100% chance to self-unhook in the right conditions, completely countering camping hooks. What's crazier is that there's a built-in 100% chance to self-unhook. I'm sure if you have ever played Survivor, you'd notice this little bar at the bottom of the screen when you're hooked. This is the anti-camp meter. Well, more like anti-face camp meter. It doesn't really counter proxying. Basically, if the killer is face camping with no other survivors nearby for a prolonged period of time, the survivor's hook meter charges. When it's full, that survivor can self-unhook with a guaranteed chance of getting off that hook. This doesn't punish proxy camping at all, as a lot of players have complained about, but it does mean that the glory days of face camping Bubba are no more. Generator proxy camping, on the other hand, has also gotten nerfed. A lot of killers try to camp what is commonly called a 3-gen, where 3 generators are extremely close together, making them the easiest spot in the game for killers to defend and keep. The problem was that some killers were really good at this for a very long time, and Behavior decided that to never let this happen again, they added a gen regression limit of 8. Anytime a gen regresses by 5% or more at a time, it counts as a regression event. Once you hit 8, you can't regress the gen anymore. Skill checks and Ruin don't count for this. And you would think killers wouldn't camp that often because of that. Hooks have a built-in timer, generators have limited regression slots, they can't really camp efficiently, can they? And you would be wrong. Camping is very much alive and needed. The anti-camp meter turns off during endgame, so the killer is free to camp the hook as they please when the generators are done. I have personally hit the gen regression limit maybe 3 times, if that, and usually after the game is pretty much over. The only time the proxy meter comes into effect is typically on bad maps for that player's killer of choice. Huntress, for instance, sucks on RPD if it's played correctly, making it to where you need to camp. You can't leave too far from RPD being an indoor map and then they just self-unhook. But survivors are also altruistic, making a lot of players bomb rush the hook to try saving that player, knowing that the proxy camp meter doesn't work more often than not, letting killer players snowball hard by camping once in a trial. The correct play for survivors is to do generators while the killer camps until the last possible second, but most don't do that because it's deemed as boring. Depending on how the round is going, killers should camp. Low amount of hooks, bunch of gens done, a lot of resources left, the killer kind of needs to camp the one survivor they have out of the game. Which is also why camping goes hand in hand with tunneling, because if the survivor you're camping gets unhooked, you just tunnel them out instead, and carrying perks like DS and Dead Hard. It's up to the killer to know when to camp and make that decision, while it's up for survivors to even know if it's worth trying to save. The truth is, some killers are literally impossible to unhook against without just getting punished, and I mean both survivors involved. Billy, for instance, can just sit in front of Hook with his chainsaw. Survivor goes for an unhook, they get sawed, person stays up there. Hunters can camp at a range, Blight can rush at a moment's notice. Multiple characters have teleporting abilities, and some characters are still made to camp like Hag. It's part of the reason I love DBD. There's so many decisions to make in a game between the strategies, perks, killers, and survivor skill levels that no round is ever the same. makes things interesting. Just remember, if you're playing Survivor against a camping killer, play slow, work on gens, and swap at the last possible second to prolong hook states as much as possible. If you're playing killer, don't always camp. It's not always needed in rounds, and sometimes it's better to get pallets out of the way for faster down later. Choosing 5 generators to keep is by far the best idea at the start of the game, and that is the Entity's Guide to Camping. Which is really funny, because now I have videos on all 3 strategies to cross-reference in the future, which also means if behavior adds any more base kit mechanics, it can make any of these outdated. I'm scared for my future self.